The Seattle Seahawks just walked into San Francisco, punched the Niners square in the mouth, and walked out with a 13-3 victory that made the entire NFC feel very, very small. 14-3, first seed locked. Home field advantage sitting right there in Lumen Field, waiting for whoever is brave enough to try and take it. The crazy part is not that they did it, the crazy part is how normal they made it look. No drama, no desperation, no last-second heroics. Just cold, calculated dominance like they have been doing this all season long and everyone else is only now starting to notice. Every contender that wants a Super Bowl now has to fly into Seattle, hear that stadium shake, and try to stay calm while 70,000 people turn the noise into a weapon. Nobody expected this version of the Seahawks to be the team that owns January, and that is exactly why this season feels so dangerous for everyone else. When Seattle plays their game, the whole league has to adjust. To them, not the other way around. Kenneth Walker is slashing through defenses like they are made of air. Zach Charbonnet is running through arm tackles like he is trying to break a concrete wall. The offense leans on you, snap after snap, bleeding the clock, moving the chains, making you chase them while they control everything. Sam Darnold is not out there trying to be a hero. He is out there being efficient, hitting Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp in tight windows, getting the ball out on time, making the easy play look easy. Then you flip to the other side, and this defense just held Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey to one of their quietest nights all season. They shut down the run. They squeezed every single drive until the Niners looked uncomfortable in their own stadium. Now picture that same formula in Lumen Field with the 12 screaming, the cold air cutting through, the ground game rolling downhill, and a defense that smells panic before you even feel it yourself. That is not just a good team. That is a problem the rest of the NFC has to solve in real time, and most of them do not have an answer. But here's the twist that makes this season feel like something bigger than just a playoff run. This did not happen by accident. This did not come from one hot stretch or one lucky bounce. Seattle ripped out an old identity, moved on from a Super Bowl legend on the sideline, and handed the keys to a young defensive mind who has been bothering top offensive coaches since the day he stepped into the league. The Seahawks did not just find a quarterback playing the best football of his life. They built a whole system around him that can survive deep into January. The real question now is how that change started, why the front office was willing to let go of the past, and how Mike Macdonald turned this roster into the kind of defense-first machine that can carry Sam Darnold to the biggest stage. Because if you want to understand why Seattle is different, this year you have to start with the man carrying the quietest pressure of anyone in this story. The quarterback who has been waiting his entire career for a moment exactly like this. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Seahawks and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 100 likes on this video. No one in this story is carrying more weight than Sam Darnold. The Seahawks just opened the door to a Super Bowl path that runs straight through their own stadium, but for him, this is more than a playoff run. This is reputation surgery. This is the year where people either finally stop using old Jets clips as punchlines, or they lock him into that box forever. Every throw he makes in January is going to be compared to the kid who walked into New York chaos, the guy who bounced through Carolina, and the quarterback who got blamed in Minnesota when the walls fell in around him. The difference now is simple. For the first time in his career, the team around Sam Darnold actually matches the weight on his shoulders. Think about what he lived through to get here. The Jets threw him straight into the fire while the roster was still broken, cycling through voices, never giving him a real chance to sit, learn, and grow. Carolina had moments where it looked like he found something, especially when Christian McCaffrey was healthy, but injuries and changes kept resetting everything before it could settle. Then came San Francisco, and that choice almost no young quarterback makes. Instead of chasing a weak starting job somewhere else, Sam Darnold decided to stand behind Brock Purdy, study Kyle Shanahan's system, work every day with Clint Kubiak, and finally see the game from the sideline instead of always being the one expected to fix it. Minnesota showed what he could look like with real weapons. Working with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and a creative coach, he pushed that team into the top-tier conversation, only to take hit after hit when Christian Darrisaw went down and he was sacked again and again in that playoff loss to the Rams. The narrative blamed him. The tape showed something different. Seattle is where all of those years collide. The Vikings rushed to J.J. McCarthy and are now living with his growing pains, while the Seahawks offered Sam Darnold a smart contract that protects the team if it fails, but pays him if he turns this window into something real. He has a top-level defense behind him, a run game that can carry long drives, and an offensive coordinator who already knows exactly what he does well. If he wins now, he does not just change opinions. He changes how front offices think about patience with quarterbacks who struggle early. If it slips away, people will say this was the clean chance that got away. To understand why Seattle was willing to bet this big on him, you have to look at the decision that started all of it. The moment they let go of Pete Carroll and handed the future of this team to Mike Macdonald. The wildest decision the Seattle Seahawks made was not trusting Sam Darnold. It was looking at Pete Carroll, a coach tied to the greatest years in franchise history, and deciding the future needed a different voice. Around the league, it felt risky. Why walk away from a legend who still won games and still filled the stadium? But inside the building, they saw something else. Offenses in the division were evolving. The game was leaning harder into motion, spacing, and speed, and the old answers were not holding up the same way. So Seattle did something most teams talk about but never actually do. They stopped living off the past and handed the locker room to Mike Macdonald, a young defensive mind with a very clear idea of what winning football looks like right now. Macdonald did not arrive as a hype name. He arrived with a resume built on preparation and structure. In Baltimore, he helped build a defense that smothered opponents with disguised pressures, mix and match, coverages, and a front that never looked the same on back-to-back snaps. When he landed in Seattle, the first season was messy at times. There were games where the run fits fell apart, where communication in the back end slipped, where the new language and demands were still sinking in. But even through those growing pains, you could see something different. Tackling angles cleaned up. Third down calls felt sharper. Big moments against high-powered offenses started to tilt in Seattle's favor. By the second year, that shift turned into a full identity. The unit was no longer just playing hard, it was playing on a string, forcing quarterbacks into tight windows and making every yard feel expensive. The real shock has been how deep that culture change runs. Practices now lean into versatility and intelligence, not just effort. Players are asked to learn more than one spot, to understand why a call is made, not just where to stand. The front office is clearly locked in with that plan, chasing defenders who can rush, hold gaps, and cover space instead of chasing just one trait. You see it in the way the front line moves as one, how they close lanes against power teams, then flip into pressure packages against pass-heavy attacks. This is not simply a new coach with a new playbook. It is a new standard that controls the line of scrimmage and sets the tone for everything that happens behind it. And that front seven is exactly where the real nightmare starts for the rest of the NFC. If you want to know why teams walk out of Seattle looking drained, start with the big bodies in front of the ball. This front is not built to just rush or just plug gaps. It is built to choke the life out of a game snap by snap. Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy line up inside, then slide outside, then twist across the formation, and every time the offensive line has to reshuffle on the fly. Jaron Reed sits in the middle like an anchor, eating double teams so everyone else can attack on the edge. DeMarcus Lawrence sets a firm wall, forcing runs back inside where the traffic is heavy and the space disappears fast. By the time you reach the second quarter, backs are bouncing sideways instead of downhill, and that is when you feel the whole tone of the game flip in Seattle's favor. What nobody talks about enough is how much speed and timing Seattle has mixed into that size. When it is time to turn up the heat, Derek Hall, Boy Mafe, and Uchenna Nwosu rotate in like fresh legs in a fight, firing off the ball and forcing quarterbacks to hurry throws they do not really trust. That tip pass near the goal line that landed in Drake Thomas' hands is the perfect example of how it all connects. Pressure up front changing the flight of the ball, a linebacker reading it and turning a scoring chance into a back-breaking turnover. Behind them, Ernest Jones cleans up everything that leaks through, tracking backs from the backside, closing on tight ends over the middle, and making sure short gains do not turn into long runs. It is not just talent, it is the way every piece moves in the same rhythm, like a puzzle that keeps closing every door right when an offense thinks it has found one. The scary part is how that front makes every opponent play left-handed. If you love to run wide zone, they close the edge. If you try to spread it out and throw quick, the rush gets hands in passing lanes and the throwing windows shrink. Once an offense realizes they cannot win up front, they are forced to put the ball in the air longer and deeper than they want, and that is when the real chess match starts. Because while this front seven is hammering away at the pocket and clogging lanes, Seattle has built a secondary designed to erase first reads, jump routes, and turn hesitation into turnovers. And that back end is where this defense becomes a complete nightmare. The Seattle Seahawks defense does not really start feeling scary until the ball leaves the quarterbacks, hand and heads toward the outside. That is when the picture suddenly changes. Passing lanes that looked open slam shut, throws that felt safe turn into tight window prayers, and you can almost feel quarterbacks start staring at the rush because they do not trust what they see downfield anymore. At the center of that shift is Devin Witherspoon, who moves around the formation like a problem that never stays in one place. One play he is pressed outside, the next he is in the slot. The next he is screaming off the edge, and every time he arrives with attitude and timing. Offenses try to find him to attack, then realize the real question is how to avoid him without slowing the whole concept down. On the other side, Riq Woolen changes how teams think about the deep ball. His length and speed mean you cannot just dial up a simple go route and hope your wideout runs past him. He can turn and sprint with the fastest receivers in the league, track the ball in the air, and still have enough. Reach to poke it away at the last moment. That alone forces coordinators to dial back the vertical shots they love to call. Then you add Nick Emenwari, the piece that ties the entire back group together. He plays like a safety, hits like a linebacker, and moves like a big corner. One snap he is driving on a tight end in the flat, the next he is flying downhill to stone a run at the line, the next he is carrying a receiver 30 yards down the seam. That kind of player lets Mike McDonald call coverages that look light on paper but feel heavy on contact. The depth behind them is what makes this more than just a few stars playing well. Julian Love brings range and calm to the back line, reading the quarterback's eyes, sliding into passing lanes, and cleaning up anything that leaks behind the corners. When healthy, Kobe Bryant adds another instinctive piece in the slot, jumping routes, getting his hands on the ball, and giving Seattle the freedom to live in nickel without losing. Toughness against the run. So now picture what an offense has to deal with. A front that squeezes the pocket and shuts down rushing lanes, matched with a secondary that disguises coverages, rallies to the football, and punishes every late throw. That kind of identity does more than win games. It sends a message to the other side of the ball. And the next twist in this story is how the offense finally changed its own mindset to match that same standard of control. The real turning point for the Seattle Seahawks offense was not a trick play or a big trade. It was a decision to stop pretending they were a pure air raid team and start playing the kind of football that actually protects Sam Darnold. Instead of chasing huge passing totals every week, Seattle leaned into a style that beats you with patience and body shots. Look at that night in San Francisco. They ran the ball 39 times, piled up around 180 rushing yards, controlled the clock, and asked Sam Darnold to be sharp, not desperate. That kind of game script does not make viral fantasy numbers, but it breaks a defense slowly, and it fits exactly what this roster is built to do. Last season showed why this change was needed. Under Ryan Grubb, Geno Smith spent most of the year firing the ball 35 to 40 times a game, while the offensive line tried to hold up longer than it was built for. The run game felt like a formality, something they did just enough to set up play action instead of a real strength. By the final month, even that staff had to admit the obvious and started handing the ball off more, and the whole unit suddenly looked less frantic. That stretch was a preview of what was coming. Pete Carroll moved on from that approach. Clint Kubiak came in with his background from San Francisco, and the plan flipped. More snaps under center, tighter formations, heavy motion, play action built off real runs instead of empty fakes. Early downs used to stay ahead of the chain, so Sam Darnold did not have to live in third and long. What makes this so dangerous now is how well the pieces match that mindset. Kenneth Walker hits cutback lanes with explosion, Zach Charbonnet punishes arm tackles and drags defenders, and suddenly those 2nd and 8 spots turn into 2nd and 3 instead. That buys Sam Darnold time to work calmly with Jackson Smith-Njigba and Cooper Kupp, picking their moments instead of forcing throws into traffic. Even when drives stall, the structure is clear enough that someone like Jason Myers usually just has to finish the job, not rescue chaos. This is no longer an offense chasing style points. It is an offense built to squeeze opponents in the same way the defense does, and that only works because the people around Sam Darnold are perfectly chosen for this version of Seattle, from his receivers to the linemen in front of him. That supporting cast is the next piece of this story, and once you see how they have been rebuilt, it becomes a lot easier to understand why this year feels like his best chance to lock in a new legacy. Seattle rebuilt the offense around Sam Darnold with a balanced cast. Jackson Smith-Njigba emerging as the centerpiece, Cooper Kupp as the veteran solver, Rashid Shaheed stretching defenses, and rookie Torrey Horton flashing potential. The offensive line, anchored by Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, and Jalen Sundell, with rookie Gray Zabel at guard, forms a real shield. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet provide explosive and physical rushing, while Jason Myers delivers automatic scoring. This supporting cast offers Sam Darnold the reliability he's never had. But the ultimate test against the NFC's elite is coming fast. The Seattle Seahawks hold the NFC's top spot, but face a brutal gauntlet including the Rams with Matthew Stafford, Eagles with Jalen Hurts, Rising Bears, Packers with Jordan Love, and revenge-hungry Niners with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. Seattle's bet on structure over star power, led by Mike McDonald's defensive science and Clint Kubiak's timing-based offense, challenges the league's win-now mentality. By building around Sam Darnold instead of discarding him like the Jets and Vikings did, Seattle tests whether patience and system fit can triumph. If it works, every front office must rethink quarterback development. If it fails, the experiment crashes when the margin for error vanishes.